Well, hey there, my name's Luke, and you're listening to the Good Folks Doing Good Work podcast, a podcast where I interview folks all throughout the coffee supply circle about the good they're trying to bring into the world and hopefully remind you to keep bringing good things into this world in your context. Let's get into this week's podcast. Well, today I have the privilege of chatting with Miah Sommer, who's a social entrepreneur and the founder and executive director of Astute Coffee. Astute is a nonprofit coffee shop providing workforce development and life skills to youth who've been impacted by the foster care system. With Miah at the helm, Astute Coffee received the Excellence in Innovation Award on behalf of the Omaha Chamber of Commerce. Miah is also a recipient of the Donna Tubach Davis Children's Advocate Award from the Child Saving Institute. He also is a thought leader in the social entrepreneurial space and has given talks at the TEDx stage as well as taught at Homeboy Industries in Los Angeles. He's a husband, a father to 2 boys, and has become a fast friend, all the way from Omaha, Nebraska. Welcome to the Good Folks podcast, Miah.
Thanks for having me, man. I'm really excited.
Yeah.
Does it really say thought leader on the bio?
I put that in there because I think you are. Because I listened to your TEDx talk
that
and I
doesn't
said,
sound like me.
I think you're a thought leader, and that's part of why I wanted to have you on here.
Okay, great. I'll take it. I mean, we'll see. Let's revisit that at the end. But yeah, thanks for having me, man. I'm excited to be here.
Yeah, it's good to have you. Miah, when someone enters the cafe on their first shift at Astute, what do you see in them?
It's a nice mix of like the normal first day job jitters, but like if we've done a good enough job in the interview, and our staff usually does, you kind of see this like excitement of like, oh man, this is something that's going to be good for me. This is something I'm ready. It's almost not like, hey, I'm starting another job. It really is. By the time you're done with the interview process, you have them convinced that this is something that's going to be a pivot point in their life. And you can see the kind of mix of nervousness and excitement and, just kind of, I think, curiosity of, is this really what they say it is? And so it's really fun when somebody comes in on their first day, because I think we're just as nervous and apprehensive and excited as they are. So it's really interesting, I think.
Hey, really quickly, I have 3 things I want to share with you. Number 1, I run a consulting firm called Pomelo Coffee Consulting, and I only work with coffee roasters, and I help them with 3 things: their people, their processes, and their profit. Now, within Pomelo, I also run a cohort for owners. There's some learning opportunities, there's some reading opportunities, there's some hot seat sections, and I got to tell you, it's been pretty amazing to see what's possible when a group of owners are sharing the things that they're facing, both the good things and the bad things, and providing some camaraderie and also a mirror to see that I'm not alone in this world, in this business, and there's people who are doing similar things, maybe have already done the things that I'm doing and that I'm facing. If that sounds interesting to you and you want to find some other roasters and have some camaraderie with them, you can go to my website, pomelocoffeeconsulting.com, go to the Junto tab. There's a tab at the top of my website, and you can learn more and see if you're a good fit for that. Lastly, I wrote a book. It's called The Owner's Manual, A Guide to Sustaining a Coffee Roaster, and really it fleshes out the framework that I use when I work with clients, the core 7 that is. If that's something that sounds interesting to you, you can go to my website. There's a tab at the top that says book, and you can snag yourself a copy. All right, back to the show. So you mentioned that if you've done a good job in the interview process, that they're well prepared and kind of know what to expect. What does that look like? What does the interview process look like for somebody who's interviewing to work at Astute?
It used to be kind of boring where we just like followed the, typical interview process, back in the day. But now I think it's like, as we've been around longer and we have people who have gone through it themselves, they're the ones who are doing the interview process. So they're the ones who are saying like, hey, this is what you can expect, like it feels like people are in your business at first. And you're kind of just preparing them for the fact that, yes, this is a job in the sense that you get paid for it, but like we really try to market it as this is an opportunity, this is a program, and this is a place where you can make these changes if you let it happen. And so they usually know like, hey, we're going to do this and we're going to like check up on you once a week and you're going to have these corrective conversations, but you're also going to have people in your corner just like cheering you on in ways that you haven't before. And so I think just preparing them for and the uniqueness that is the program. Since we let some of the staff do it, just like come in, like, hey, just ask the questions you wanted to be asked or you want to know. It was kind of alarming at first because we didn't tell them what were legal questions and what weren't legal questions. So it was like,
Sure.
who'd you vote for in the last election? Stuff like that, like, how old are you? Like stuff, just all these illegal questions that are just like, no, but you can't answer. You can't ask them that.
Yeah.
So, but they answer, which is great. So we know who some of them voted for in the last election, but we try not to ask that.
For everyone who doesn't know, don't ask that at an interview question.
Yeah, I can't stress that enough.
You mentioned a couple things like we're going to be up in your business. We're going to have some corrective conversations. And you also mentioned something called the program. So what is Astute's program?
So we are a nonprofit coffee shop and we provide workforce development for young adults who have been impacted by the foster care system. And so whether you aged out or whether you're in the foster care system, usually that's associated with some sort of childhood trauma. And with that trauma, I think, you carry that into adulthood. So when we think of foster kids, we tend to think of the younger ones, and we don't really think about what that's like when you age out of the system. And so aging out of the system is when you're still a ward of the state, you haven't been reunited with your family, and you haven't been adopted. Once you turn into an adult, you've aged out of their care. So you are not a ward of the state anymore. You are basically just kind of on your own, which is a horrifying thought for anybody. I mean, I think most people, like aren't ready to be fully adults at 19, no matter how advantageous their upbringing was. And so if you take people who are in situations of, childhood abuse, whether it's sexual, physical, neglect, things like that, those obviously have a huge effect on you and your development and how you're going to transition to adulthood. I think that's the big thing. Kind of long answer to that is what we did with that is a program that you work there. You get paid like a normal coffee shop. You're making coffee, you're doing everything a barista would do. And so you have that normal interview, but there's a whole host of programming that is designed to kind of help you transition to adulthood. So we have financial literacy classes, we have cooking and nutrition classes, we have group therapy, we have academic tutoring. We just went mountain biking the other day. We have group outings. It's all these things that kind of are going to help your transition to adulthood be as successful as it should and as you deserve to be, I think, because everybody needs family, everybody needs support. And so I think what we want out of that is kind of level the playing field, and my whole situation is if my kids get to do it, then I think the people I work with should get to do it as well.
I love that perspective. And you're absolutely right. When folks are 18 years old, even if they have had all of the privileges and advantages in the world, they're not quite ready to just take on the world, and they still need support and they still need somebody to talk about things. What do I do with finances? What does it look like to eat well? And all of these things are fundamental, but also crucial to thriving as an adult.
Right. I think that's I think it's kind of says a lot about our foster care system when people aren't completely ready for that. There's tons of wonderful foster parents, but I think
of course
we don't really have to put anything out there about the foster care system to know that there's been some negative impacts on the young adults.
Yeah.
And so,
Yeah.
I really like working with kids from the foster care system because they are the most like me, like my upbringing. But also just because you don't have to use the terms that sometimes people use with at-risk youth or like underserved or, all those other things that end up sounding like pejoratives. I think those are the big things that bother me is just when you are labeled with something that's kind of like just basically is a qualification of you as a person. And so if we could just say like, hey, they were affected by the foster care system, it really drives home the point that this isn't something that they did. This is something that happened to them, but it's not something they did. I just think it's too often we do these nonprofits focused on that sort of thing of just like the dis disadvantaged youth or something like that.
Right. Right. So you said the reason why you're working with these individuals is because they're the most like you, and that's who you're serving.
Right.
What does
Yeah.
that mean? Were you in the foster care system?
I wasn't. I think the reason I should have been, but I think, I grew up in the 70s and 80s in South Omaha where it was just kind of you just kind of mind your own business type stuff. I grew up in poverty and food shortage, neglect, had a very unstable households. And then, once my dad left, I was kind of left in a pretty rough situation. And I think a visit from CPS would have put me there. But for whatever reason, it didn't happen. All of that stuff still affected me. And I just ended up as a depressed kid. I ended up as a very, not very great student. And one thing led to another. And then I ended up dropping out of high school, and didn't really kind of find my way for a while. And um, I think it's the interesting thing about us, what's a little counterculture about us is I think a lot of mentoring programs are designed to say like, just be like me and you'll be good. I think that's kind of the basis of mentoring programs is like, hey, just be like me and then, do the things I do and you'll
Yeah.
be good. And mine
Yeah.
is set up to just like, don't be like me, like flashing red
Mm.
light. Don't make the choices that I made. Don't beat my records. And no one has beaten my record. I was 27 when I got my GED and started college. And so nobody in the program has been that old when they got their GED. So yay for me, I guess.
Yeah.
you know?
Yeah. I mean, you did it, right? But I know I really I appreciate that approach because when we talk about mentorship, the assumption is, like you said, be like me. But we're making a second assumption there, which is I have everything together, which is not entirely true. It's that no, I'm here to support you, and what does that look like for you? Not necessarily replicate my decisions or my life because you're not me.
Right. Yeah, exactly. Everybody's situation is different and like success
Yeah.
looks differently. And so, but it is just like, I think you're automatically starting on the wrong foot if you're saying like, if there's some sort of like asymmetry in
Yeah.
what you feel as far as like worth of the people. And
Yeah.
if you're like reaching down to somebody I feel like there's just a separation that's there. If you don't see yourself in the people you're serving, then I think there's no point in it.
100%. 100%. Because then, yeah, there's an automatic hierarchy that's built in that it doesn't necessarily need to be there from I'm better than you or I have it figured out. That's not the case. Have you read the book Helping by Edgar Sheen?
No, no, do tell.
I make all of the owners that go through my cohort read it, but really the reason is that he's a process consultant. He's also a professor at Harvard, and his thesis of the book is that helping is a two-way street, meaning in order for me to help you, you have to allow me permission to do that. But then the other side of the conversation is that in order to receive help, there's a power imbalance that if you're offering some type of help, you have to also acknowledge that, or it becomes this, like you said, reaching down to help somebody instead of being like, no, it's okay. I'm here to support you and what you're doing. And I hear that in what you're talking about in terms of permission and also understanding like we're not reaching down.
Yeah, it's like the Father Boyle, just like you stand on the margins so you can erase the margins. Father Greg Boyle from Homeboy Industries, who's my hero. I like that idea of just like standing on the margins so the margins disappear. I like
Yeah.
this idea, and
Yeah.
I think it's very true in this situation because these young adults that I work with are very perceptive,
Oh
like
yeah.
they've used so much of this to like survive and myself included, I just know how to read people really well. I know how to talk to people really well. And it's because of what happened to me. And so they spot a fake pretty
Yeah.
quickly.
Yeah.
And they will either tell the person or they'll tell me, and it's great just to see the insight that they have because they can really just unveil like everything you think you're hiding very well.
Yeah. Out of curiosity, you mentioned some terms that are trigger terms or terms that you don't appreciate. I'm curious, just personally, what's some language that you would like to erase from our vocabulary around folks that are aging out of the foster care system or even in the foster care system?
Yeah, I mean, like there are things that definitely like are true in the sense of like disadvantaged, is like if you technically break it down, that's true. But there's, obviously that's just it's a judgment. It's a pejorative. We've had the same mailman here at the shop and I always get on him about junk mail, but he always stresses that it's called opportunity mail, and like,
Sure.
that still sounds ridiculous. And like,
Yeah.
I think they tried to do that with young adults too. These are opportunity youth. And so it is just like, I think people have a tough time not being able to have the language to talk about this, because some people just panic. They're like, how are your projects doing, And it's like, it's just best to think of them as human beings, the thought processes that come from that language. And if you have this like pejorative language for the young adults we work with, then that already is a separation. And it's a separation, and it's not even just a separation, it's a ranking. And I think you're lost then at that point because they've already seen right through it and it doesn't work. That's how I just operate in life. I want everyone to be, and this isn't going to happen, but I want everyone to be on the same level. And if you put yourself above me, I will fight everything to get us down to the right level. But if you put me above you, I will fight to get us at the right level, And I think that's the thing. It's just like I feel like I just want to flatten these hierarchies. And I think that just comes from my upbringing. I think there's a natural mistrust of authority because the people who are in charge of me didn't do a great job. And I think that can be good and it can be bad, but I think questioning everything is a very good way to do things because not everybody has your best interest in mind, even if they are your biological parents. We always say around here, they might have a father and a mother, or might have a mom and a dad. You know what I'm saying.
Yeah.
I always
Yeah.
say I
Yeah.
might have a
Yeah.
father, but I don't have a dad, and I think that's the thing. It's just like there are biological entities out there that are my progenitors, but they're not a mom and a dad in the sense
Hmm.
that people need moms and dads.
We're back to the same language around, the standing on the margin versus in some ways like reaching across it, because you're that standing on those margins is the thing. It's the equalizing factor. It's the equilibrium of power, which is really, really important.
Yes, and the information flows both ways, and I learn just as much from them as they do from me, and there's nothing shocking about that. But I mean, sometimes I think it can be for people because you do this sort of work, you get put into a position and you get kind of sainted. And like, I've gone through that whole process of where people just ascribe you qualities that you don't have, that aren't you. And then you either believe it, which then you're fucked, or you're trying to live up to it and then you're
Hmm.
fucked too. So it's just like
Hmm.
you're holding a pose, I think, that is unnatural for you. And, you know, so they think if you're teaching them these things, or not even teaching, if you're, trying to help achieve their goals or something, that you must have everything figured out. But I don't think we all know what
Hmm.
coaching looks like. We all know that
Yeah.
they're like the baseball coach can be a fantastic hitting coach, but he might not be able to go out there and hit 100-mile-an-hour fastball, but he could still, we don't expect the hitting coach in the major leagues to be able
No,
to do it.
they can't go toe to
But
toe. Yeah.
yes,
No.
it's a necessary part, I think. And I think the less we romanticize the role of, say, myself in this, I think the better off we see the picture a little more clear.
Mm, it's beautiful. Before we kind of jump past this, I am curious, how did you develop the programming for the individuals who are going through this and work for you?
It was kind of like definitely group efforts. I mean, some of it just straight out my ass, and some of it was just from tried and true methods, I think, too. There aren't tons of programs out there like us, but there are financial literacy programs. And so, while you're doing this, trying to find your way, you can cherry pick from things, they might not be the same organization, but they're
Totally.
utilizing a program
Hmm.
that sounds good. And then some of the stuff we just had to make up from just empirical data. It was people kept showing up late. Going into this program, you're not going to get fired necessarily for like the normal things like showing up late. But then we get into the situation 6 months, 12 months in where it's like, there's no teeth, like it's basically like they show up late, then they show up the next day late. And so it's like, stop, or I'll yell, stop again. I think it feels like that situation. And so we had to come up with programs just like, hey, like if you are late this many times in a pay period, you drop down an hour, a dollar an
Mm.
hour at your rate. And I had to go to a labor lawyer. I'm like, hey, is any of this legal? Like,
Yeah,
and so,
totally.
and so we had to get it checked out. And so you do kind of come up with some programs, but then it's just like it just evolves, and the longer the program's around, the more you have people going through it. And so when you have people who have gone through the program, you can bring them on as full-time employees and consultants. And then I think that's where you start hitting your stride, because I can only dream
Yeah,
up so much in my little brain. But when you have somebody, it's like, hey, when I was through the program, this is what worked. And,
yeah.
we had this situation where people were like, they were doing really well, and they were leaving the program, and the wheels just came off. They would just like kind of
Mm.
nosedive, and you're like, well, I feel like they were ready, and they were ready to leave the nest. And it was Sam, one of our former employees and still a dear friend of mine. He just said like, hey, just like when I felt like there was a countdown from when I was leaving, and even though I was doing good, I felt like I was cut off from that network. I was cut off from those services, and it ended up being another countdown, just like it was when people age out of the foster care system. And so we came up with this idea that like, with him, kind of work with him, like, hey, can I just have somebody work 1 day a week for as long as they want? You can just come in and work 1 day a week. And that's what we did. And like, it just that little like twist just made people feel like, okay, I can stay connected if I want. I control this,
Yeah,
instead of like, okay, your year-long program is up here and then you're gone, type thing. I mean, that's harsh and black and white, but for our purposes here, it works. You can stay on as long as you want, and come in. You want to work Fridays every week, you do that. And then being able to stay connected just did something to them mentally that really kind of took care of that. And that wasn't me. I didn't think of that. It wasn't anybody from our board. That was a past participant that thought of it. And I think that's kind of the magic of having them go through it. I mean, most of our employees here have gone through the program. So they're pretty well versed on what it's like to start and what it's like to finish and go through the peaks and valleys.
what I hear in that is you're listening. You're open to changing your approach, and you're open to learning based off of the feedback you're getting from the people that are going through and working for you and going through this program.
Yeah, definitely. I mean, I think you have to in these situations, and I think
Yeah.
they have so much more empirical data than I do, and they have so much more wisdom than I do of what it's like to be on that side. Because no matter how many people I bring in,
Lived.
or how long I've been doing it, I will not be on that end of it as far as the program side of it.
Yeah. 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 So good. So a common complaint that I hear from owners often is I just can't find good people.
Yeah,
And you've decided to shrink your pool even smaller.
yeah, yeah,
And
yeah.
how do you find employees? Like, do you reach out to them? Do they reach out to you? Is there some type of a pipeline that you're watching? Like, how are you finding folks that work for Astute?
At first it was just kind of like, we started working with Project Everlast, who works with kids who've aged out of the foster care system. And as you stick around, then that grows. So it does go through word of mouth from, some of the kids at the shop. They're all young adults, but I'm going to call them kids because I'm 52 years old and I feel like that's my right, and they should stay off my grass
Yes.
too,
Agreed.
you know, but
Yes.
they've been warned. But it just gets around, and then you start to work with other organizations. And Nebraska has a Bridge to Independence program, which is run by Health and Human Services. And if you, when you age out, you can get a stipend, like a 900 $1 a month stipend if you show that you're working for 20 hours a week or going to school for 20 hours a week. And those people are assigned
Gotcha.
to workers. So the bridge workers know this is where you can take you know, your individuals and they'll do really well. But I think what one time when I knew we were kind of onto something is I went to a juvenile court hearing with one of our employees. I don't know what they did. I forgot what they did. I'm sure they just got caught with weed or something like that. But
Yeah.
it was,
Yeah.
are they going to go do some jail time or are they going to go here? The lawyer said that they were working for us and they let the person go and then they ended it. And then the juvenile judge just like kind of waved me over. It's like, hey, like, come over here. Like I kept them out because I know they're working with you and I trust that you'll be able to
Hmm.
take care of them on it. And so I think that was kind of
Wow.
the first time where I was
Yeah.
like, oh, shit, you know, this is
There's something here.
working. Yeah, there's something there, I
Yeah.
think. I'm,
Hmm.
I do feel like our reputation is good. I feel like we're doing what we set out to do. Are we perfect? No, but I do feel like it's one of those organizations that the more you see, the better it looks, it's like as far as like seeing the
Hmm.
sausage being made is where the magic is here. And so it's like the more time you can spend here, I would happily, if any of the funders or anybody wants to find out more about the program, I think you talk to the employees too, if you want to get down into the inner workings, and they can say it better than I would. Touching on the employees thing is you were saying how the owners say how hard it is to find good help. And for us, it's really interesting because you're running a workforce development program. So if they come in and they're really good, you're like, did I hire the right person? And so it's like you have to
Sure.
like second guess, it's like there has to be some work that needs to be done, because it's easy to get ringers, it's easy to get people like, yeah, technically you were, but it's also
Yeah.
that balance of just like trying to figure out like, okay, what are we willing to put up with and fix here. And I think over the 10 plus years that we've been around, we've gotten better at knowing you need somebody who just needs that kind of push over the top of the mountain, but you can't take somebody from 100 miles away and to the mountain and mostly over it. I think just the realization that that's not good for them and it's not good for us to try to fit a square peg in a round hole. I think we've kind of learned on that too.
I'm firing on all cylinders here because one of my critiques, and this is true of roasters or cafe owners or just people in general who own businesses, the assumption that I just can't find good people. Oh, well, yeah, because you're hiring for this person that doesn't exist yet. And it's your responsibility as an owner and a leader to
Mm-hmm.
develop the people into what you need them to
Right.
be. And
Right.
if
To
you do
grow it.
that,
Yeah.
yes, because
Yeah.
uh, I loved how you framed earlier. You're saying like these kids can snuff out like if you're for real or not. And I think that in the for-profit space, the assumption is like, oh, well, I just need better people. No, no, you need to become a better leader, and you need to learn how do I help this person become who they already are. What is the sort of polishing that needs to be done? You're not expecting them to come in as a finished product. And I think that shift, in my opinion, it would be helpful for the whole industry, the for-profit side of the house too. It's like
Yes.
that's your job.
Right. That is your job. And I think that's, if not, you become a poacher of other shops.
Precisely.
If you can't grow your own talent, and I see it in the coffee industry and I saw it in the bike industry too, of just like, if you don't have the programs and the infrastructure to make good employees, then you just steal good employees and everyone wants to punch you in the face.
Well, and then it's just about the dollar amount too of like, well, how much are you offering versus the next guy? And that's not a
Right.
helpful environment either.
Right. Exactly. I think, yeah, you have to give them some reason to stay because there's only so much money that the position can be paid. And I'm a very big advocate for paying people the right way, but there has to be, um, I mean, every shop says they want to build community. Every shop says they're a family. Every shop says what they want to do, but how do you make people feel valued? And how do you make people,
Yeah.
and here it's better because it's like I can say like, I genuinely love the individuals I work with, and I'm so invested in them because that's my whole focus is to be invested with them. And so, that you don't have to capitalize them. You don't have to say like, all right, how much money is this person going to be able to make me to be able to stick around, and then we can form the relationship. And so here it's like it's almost different. You form the relationship with the person and you make all these deposits. And here we say that all the time. Like, have you, I think you've made the deposits in this person. You put enough trust to this person that you can have this hard conversation with them, or you can tell them that they're fucking up on this. And I think that's important, but it is kind of like it's reversed here. Just you build up the trust and the relationship, and then the good product comes after that, if
Yeah,
that makes sense.
I mean, I love the no, I love the sort of like deposits conversation, because I think that's where we get hung up, is that like as owners, the assumption is like, well, I'm hiring you, so I'm already putting a deposit in because of the money I'm paying you, which is the incorrect approach, in my opinion. It's no, you gotta you gotta keep depositing into them, and then they pay you back through
Right.
loyalty, through you know becoming a brand ambassador. Like, all of those things come after the fact. You have to make the first step towards them. And I think that we would do well as an industry to learn from the approach you're taking. I wouldn't advocate for folks to say that they love their employees because they might have to fire them, but that's
Yeah, I know.
we might differ on that one.
Right. No, it is like there's very much like it's there's a lot of things you wouldn't do normally here where it's like there's just a lot of like giving of gifts and things that you wouldn't do in a mentoring program either, but it's just like or complimenting or if you get down to the language of homeboy industries, it's cherishing. And like, if you kind of like, if was a normal like for-profit coffee shop and I told my employees I cherish them and like, you're worth this. And, this is, I think you're bordering on creepy at that point. So it's just like it's just an interesting environment to be in because the rules are kind of out the window here with like how you're going to relate to them. And if you're a good enough reader of human beings, you're going to relate to them the way they want to be related to.
Yeah.
And you
Yeah.
naturally, if you're doing anything trauma informed, you're going to approach them in the way that you feel is the best for their particular personality. And with for profits, you really can't do that as well because you have to have policies and procedures. So here's like, it was somebody's birthday today, and it's like, I don't know how they celebrate their birthdays, and they're fairly new. So it's like, we just, we're just feeling them out. We're like, hey, how about we just gave them $50 and said, go walk downtown and go have some lunch, and you're going to stay on the clock the rest of the day and go buy a book, go buy a record, and like, it's like people need to know that they, a lot of us haven't had good birthdays in the past. We haven't had good experiences with that. And so birthdays are an interesting thing here. And I think we do it right. And
Yeah.
again, the way we do it right is because of past employees. Like Tiffany, one of our older employees, she's like, when it's people's birthdays, we should all sit at the round table and we should go around and say what we love about that person. I think that was 7, 8 years ago. And we still do it. It's fantastic. And people cry and like it's
Yep.
just like it's so fun like to do that, like because it's like you wouldn't just sit around and do that, but it's like, hey, here's what I love about you. You're this, you're this, you're this, and I love it. And then I mean, we've had people so uncomfortable with it that they gag. We've had people just like
Yeah.
straight like, I honestly don't want to do this, and we honor that. But the people who are
Yeah.
like, yes, it's good for me, I need to hear these things, that they're just like, oh my
Hmm.
god, like it's hard to hear those sorts of things when you've grown up, you know like when you've grown up the way that all of us have. It gets kind of like it gets embedded in you in ways you don't know. It's just
Yeah.
like for me, it was like, hey, you're stupid, you're ugly, you look like your father, get out of my sight. That was like, that wasn't something that just happened once and I'm freaked out about it. It's just something that happened. And it was
Yeah.
like, she wasn't feeling great. She was going through a tough time, and I understand that. But so that's what happens with us. And so I think it's a very uncomfortable feeling when someone comes in and says it's like, "Hey, I see you. You're awesome. Like this is great. You're doing this." It's it's strange for people to get that at first. And it's fun to be able to do that though, and to break through those walls.
I really appreciate that. And first of all, you're smart, you're handsome, and I'm glad that you're here.
Thank you.
And
Thank you.
those things are hard to yeah, it's good to be around people that you're working with. I'm getting a little emotional thinking about it. Yeah, because in those moments when yeah, people you work with are saying things that are um that they see in you. Oh man, you're being seen by people that you show up and serve coffee next to and serve the community with, and they see things in you too. It's powerful.
Yeah. It
And
goes
it's
a long
weird,
way.
and it wouldn't work. It wouldn't work
No.
in a for-profit space, and I wouldn't encourage someone
Yeah.
to necessarily do that in that way.
Right.
But that
Yeah,
is
this
what's
isn't a
needed
how
in your
to.
environment.
Right. It's definitely needed in our environment. It's just like celebrate those people, you know, and people, oh, we don't do that enough. We do it after they're gone, or we do it, and I think it's just like people need to feel loved, and people need to feel a part of something. And we always consider ourselves just like, people who are kind of the island of misfit toys. Like it's just, you don't, when you have that sort of childhood trauma, you don't feel like you fit in places. You don't really work here. You don't work there. It's just always kind of an uncomfortable fit. But here it's like, all right, this is it. Your trauma is not who you are. We trauma dump sometimes and just laugh because we've gone through it together, and like,
Yeah.
it's like, oh wow, your mom sounds crazier than my mom. We were going to call the place Mama Trauma Coffee just because it was like ridiculous. And it was like, man, everybody's mom is crazy. But it's a place where you can
Yeah.
feel not judged by the things that you've gone through. And I think when that vulnerability is like from top down, then I think that you kind of like create this space where it's safe. And I think I just want to create a spot where people can come in and be themselves. And I think that's why we have signs everywhere of who's welcome, of who we celebrate and things like that. And I think it's really important, you know, to let people know that this is a spot for them.
Yeah. Yeah. Man, I really appreciate that. And I think that, yeah, I'm glad that you're doing that. It's really, really necessary. Okay. So Astute started as the bike union mentoring
Correct.
project. Is that correct?
Correct.
Take me
Yeah.
back to January 2014. What was happening in your life that was like, I'm going to start this bike mentoring program and see what happens?
Temporary insanity. Like it was just like that weird cliff jump that entrepreneurs do where it's like this is good. This is a good idea, like, and I'm sure there's so many people who can like, get behind that, like, yeah, this is totally going to work. Just being an idiot, I think. And just like, I was in the bike industry, and I was managing two shops, and I got to be out in the community, and I started a mountain bike mentoring program for kids, and we would work with Boys and Girls Club and Girls Inc., a really cool organization around here, and then Child Saving Institute. And we just take kids mountain biking. No expectations, nothing. Just take them mountain biking. And when you do that with the kids, traditional mentoring programs are really interesting because it's just like you have to match strangers with kids, and it's like you go out for ice cream and you just hoping nobody like does anything, the kid doesn't run
Yeah.
away or the person doesn't murder the kid, or I don't know, whatever it is that people worry
Yeah,
about,
totally.
you know?
Yeah.
And so we would just have a group of us that would go out, and we have a group of kids, and then you kind of naturally end up, riding in a group of people, and you end up next to somebody, and like you're just, hey, we're gonna go over that log, and that becomes a shared experience. And it was really cool how it just kind of opened up doors. And then for me, the realization was, oh man, most of these kids grew up the same way I did. I am so like similar to all these kids that we're riding with. And so that kind of just planted a seed in me, and these opportunities came up. And I really kind of fought it for a while. And then it's like, okay, this is probably what I should do, because I think I was coming to terms with my own, you know, like childhood trauma, because it does get repressed. That isn't something that just happens on fucking soap operas. Like, I repressed a lot of stuff, and it was coming to the fore as I was turning 40. So it was just like, cool, this is what I'm going to do. And we're going to start this nonprofit bike shop, and this is who we're going to work with. And we got this really cool building in downtown Omaha, and it should be a coffee shop. It's just like, it just screams coffee shop. And I knew nothing about the coffee industry. And so I was just like, this is a coffee shop too. And I just went and bought a used coffee shop, slightly used coffee shop on Craigslist, and then got it all here, and then told my board after, like, oh, by the way, we're a coffee shop now, because I just, that's how I roll, and
Did they
yeah,
love
so then
that?
they were just like, you should really check with us on that. And I was basically, you should just kind of just don't worry about it. Like, I think that's
Yeah. Yeah.
the entrepreneurial spirit is, like Yvon Chouinard said, is the juvenile delinquent spirit. And there's always just
Mm-hmm.
like, this is how I'm going to do it, or I want to do it this way. And so, yeah, I mean, that's how it was. And, we started the bike shop, and it was a really great idea. It worked almost too well. It was just like, people donated bikes, we fixed them up, and then we sold them and got, like kind of a higher quality bike out to a demographic that didn't get it. We ended up recycling bikes that didn't work. You give away a ton of bikes, you end up like fixing bikes for the homeless folks that come around, since we're in downtown Omaha. The problem where it happened with us is, as we just grew in this really unique way. Curtis Wilson, who is like a brother to me, was here for 9 years. He's since moved on to be a therapist, and he's going to be a fantastic therapist. He was a really great mechanic. I'd say one of the best in town. And so people started bringing in their $10,000 bikes to us. And it really just like, it kind of just like skewered the business a little bit, because it's like, you end up all of a sudden you're doing high end bikes, and you couldn't even allow
Yeah.
foster kids within 20 yards of that. And so then it separated the
Yeah.
businesses from coffee. And so we just like, okay, the thing for like, we're not working with the kids as much as we should, and
Mm.
so close it down. And then just like, um, same mission, same everything, except we're in the trenches with them, which is so much better. And we ran the coffee shop. At that point, it was just like, well, we should be, the way we were bike nerds, we should be coffee nerds. And
Mm.
Curtis already was kind of a coffee nerd, but I had some catching up to do. Then I just went full on into coffee dork mode, and here I am now. Fast forward to today.
Welcome to the club.
Yeah, yeah,
It's good to have you.
but it's good. It's fun. Yes, it's just like, it's really fun to like explore this maddening hobby. I really enjoy coffee, and I enjoy the things that can be done with it. So much can be done with coffee for good. And I
Yeah.
think we're exploring that now.
Yeah. 100%. I think part of the reason why I wanted to have you on was because the concept of doing good without God is fascinating to me, because
Yes.
I I was raised in a Christian home, went to Bible school. I'm not in the church anymore, not really interested in the church. Cuss like a sailor, but at the same time, with all of that, I haven't lost my love for people and for the world around me and for doing good. And in fact, I feel a deeper responsibility to do good for the world and the people in it. And so I'm curious for you, like, how do you see that? Were you raised in the church at all, or what was kind of your background with the church?
Yeah, I was raised Catholic in South Omaha. So South Omaha was like where all the immigrants went. So it was like, there was everything that I am. Basically, I'm Mexican, German, Polish, Swedish, Irish. And all those people were down there in full force. And so, but it was like old school Catholic, and it's like, nuns still trigger me. Like, nuns beat me up, like, it's but they were kind of like Vatican II, like, meh, like, who, it was just very old school. I was taught of the curse of Ham, where it's like black people originated because of a punishment from God, the curse of Ham, and so it's like, it was old school. And obviously, as I grow up and start to ask questions, it was just like, oh yeah, yeah, I'm probably gonna jump off this train right now. And then,
Take the
you
first
know,
exit.
I took the first exit, and the first exit was, I think, not the healthiest place, which was just very, just like kind of rage at the church. And like, not so much for what happened to me, because, like I just got some misinformation, but that was straightened out pretty quickly. But, just like, I went through a militancy phase, which I, know isn't the place where I want people to be, because it's there's beauty in this stuff, and there's also some bad stuff in it. But I think that's the same of people. Great religious people, and there's awful
Hmm.
religious people, and it's the same.
Yeah.
There's great atheists and awful atheists, and I think
Yeah.
removing that lens from it is just like people can be good, whether they're atheist, Christian, Muslim,
Yeah.
whatever.
Yeah.
And I ended up majoring in religion in college too, so that was the
Fascinating.
yeah. But the joke that it's like, if you have a Bible on your bookshelf, you're a Christian. If you have the Tanakh, you're a Jew. And if you have the Quran, you're a Muslim. And if you have all
Yeah.
three, you're an atheist, And
Yeah, totally.
yeah,
You've
I have all three on my bookshelf
yeah.
because it is like, there's definitely stuff of value in there. But it was really like, honestly, like, sometimes I think I studied it at the beginning just to argue with people, just like, and not in any mean way to change their mind, but it was just fun to like spar and sharpen the sword with
Yeah.
friends. But
Yeah.
as I had kids, it didn't make me more religious, but it did make me, I would, if I had a choice, I maybe wouldn't make them an atheist. Maybe I would have them have the God that, maybe I didn't see, but like the God that the Jesuits talk about, of this is the God that's always greater, the God that's there, the God that accepts you as you and tells you you are just how you were supposed to be. I want my kids to have that God. I want everyone to be able to have that God. I just don't have the
Yeah.
gene for it. I don't
Yeah.
know. And since genetics are passed on to your kids, I don't think they got it either. So now they're going to be bald atheists, and sorry about that,
Bald,
kids.
handsome, good-looking atheists.
Yes,
Uh,
good dancers.
there you go.
I mean, but how about you? Like your exit on that? Like, how did when you first jumped off that train? What was your view of it?
Yeah. Well, I think that I love how you frame this, like what when you jumped off the train, because for me, I didn't jump off anything, and it was sort of like, if anything, the train was stopped, and I took a step off of it. Like it was a slow process for me, almost like an unfurling is kind of how I would explain it. Um, and for me, it unfurled like one piece at a time, and I was looking at it from the perspective of like, how do I keep this belief intact? Because the narrative that I was taught, and that was sort of the fear, the boogeyman that I was trying to avoid, was sort of a full-on rejection. And so for me, I was like, well, okay, if I don't think that my tradition is sort of, if I can't defend my own tradition, maybe there's another tradition that I can defend. And so
Hmm.
I explored Orthodox Christianity, and I explored Catholicism, and I explored what it was like to be an Anglican, the high church, and because I came from a sort of a non-denominational evangelical, just kind of like mega church background.
Hmm.
And so I started just sort of trying to figure out, how do I make sense of this given the stimuli I have in front of me? How do I make sense of this? Because I I didn't immediately just like reject God. And I
Hmm.
don't even know that I would necessarily say that I reject God. I wouldn't consider myself an atheist, but I don't know that I would necessarily say I'm a Christian. And so for me, it's just like a slow kind of unfurling of like, well, that doesn't make sense, and that doesn't make sense. And then at one point I was like, I don't think I can. There was one phrase that a friend of mine told me, and the gospel, the good news, right, of Jesus Christ. He said, if it's not good news for everyone, then it's not good news for anyone. And I've
Hmm.
never been able to forget that,
Yeah.
because there's this sort of box that we're forcing certain people to be in Christian spaces. And because I if we really believe the Bible, if we really believe that Christ came to save and he died so that none might perish, but that all might have eternal life. But then the way that we're practicing that and the way that we're living that out and communicating about that doesn't actually line up with that.
Right.
So that was kind of where it landed for me, where I was like, huh, I don't think I can wave this flag anymore. So
Right.
I don't know if that was the question you asked, but
No, it was. Yeah. Just like, I think it was just like, yeah, once the elastic snaps on
yeah,
it, then where do you stand with it? And I think the fun part about it is you can realize that, it's Christians I have a problem with, or Muslims, or
yeah,
Jews, but it's
yeah,
not the idea, it's not the tenets, it's like,
the
you
way,
know,
yeah,
there's plenty to be that's so applicable to the shop. I mean, obviously the teachings of Jesus are so applicable here. And, we use it all the time at the shop too, with just beginner's mind, from Buddhism, just like, from Zen Buddhism. If you keep a beginner's mind, you're going to learn more.
yeah,
One of my favorites from Islam is just like that. If there's something wrong, you fix it with your hands.
yeah,
And then,
yeah,
if you can't fix it with your hands, then you fix it with your tongue. But just do it. It's like, do something. And I think there's just something of value. So it's like, it was nice to know, it's like, it's Christians that bother me, but not Christ.
yeah, yeah,
It's Christians that were flawed, but the teachings are legit. And I'm an atheist in the sense of, like, I don't believe in God personally, but I don't. Whether there is one or not doesn't really bother me. And I'm sometimes jealous of people that have one.
100%.
And yeah, it's great. I envy people their faith. They really just like have the faith in the way that I just admire, and so many people do. And also my hero is a Jesuit priest, and so it's just like this, so an interesting kind of atheist. But I think it's fun to cherry pick too. It's
Yeah,
fun to just like
yeah,
cherry pick those sorts of things, and I think there's a lot there. But I remember at the beginning of the pandemic just being scared. It's kind of the first thing, in my 50 years or whatever, however old I was then, that I experienced something like that. And I was just like, man, I wish I had a dad or a God right now. That was like kind of the first time where it's like, oh man, it's just something like kind of the unknown. And you see where the comfort of that can come sometimes.
yeah,
It really was a wake up to me. It's like, well, I am a dad, and I do have all these people at the shop who are looking at me to see how to react to not only this but everything else. And it really was it was just kind of a wake up call to be like, okay, cool, you have to be the thing that you want, that you were missing in your life. And I think that's kind of where it's a good tie in back to the shop too, because
yeah,
the religious part of the shop is awesome, because there's so many different they all have so many different religious backgrounds and
I'm sure.
wacky ideas sometimes, or just like awesome ideas of just like, my favorite is like, you
Yeah,
should see my old church. We'd get crunk up in that bitch. That was like one of my favorite religious quotes, that we get crunk up in that bitch, and there's just
yeah,
always something just like, yeah, I'm not sure that's how it goes. One day if this all dissolves, I have some quotes that we all share and laugh, of just like people from the shop saying things. And it's just like, just awesome. But I do think
yeah,
it's the religious part is interesting, and like, it would be very much a disservice to them if I was an angry atheist, and if I didn't like
mm-hmm.
exhibit exhibit the values that they, want to see exhibited, or that maybe that our parents didn't have. Not to say they expect perfection, but I think they just want a reasonable person at the
Yeah,
helm. And I think
yeah,
it makes them feel better to have somebody that they can ultimately trust at the helm.
yeah. It's so good. When I would still consider myself a Christian, the language I used to use was like, well, I follow the way of Christ. And that's, I see that so much in the way that you have structured this. Like, you're not just like, here, let's fix you and get your sort of like, let's homogenize you so that you can sort of erase who you are and become a functioning member of society. No. We're saying, well, how do we make you a whole person? Which that's what, in some ways, that's what Christ was saying. I come that you might know that life and life to the fullest, right? And so like that's what you're saying. You're like, let's make sure you know how to like feed yourself and how to do your finances and how to exercise and eat. All these things are so aligned with that, but it's also just being a human, and it's
Right.
being a good parental figure, a good mentor to these kids, as you say, and treating them as if as a loving father would, which is beautiful.
Yeah. It's easy. I mean, like the job itself it can be very hard, but it is
Yeah,
like really like what we're doing. There should be nothing countercultural about it. There should be nothing surprising about it. This should be the norm. And then also it's fun to be like, if I can do it, anybody can do it. I think because there's definitely nothing special about me. I'm kind of an asshole, and like anybody who's like really close to me knows it, but it's just like, it's not hard to like tell these kids how valuable they are to the world and to themselves
mm-hmm.
and to me and to the shop and to the community. Like that's easy. And I get paid for that shit. Like,
Pretty
sign
cool.
me up. Yeah, it's great. I mean, sometimes, being around trauma for 40 plus hours a week is hard, but like
Yeah,
also like, I don't think I don't think I would change it. I'm not ready to throw in the towel. I'm still very much wanting to be a part of this, and I feel very lucky that the Omaha community supports us to be a part of
yeah.
it, and people like you let me come on and carry on about it. I think it's
I
great.
love it. I love it. So okay, so let's make it practical for folks. Because I always am thinking about the owner that's listening right now. Maybe they have a roaster or roaster cafe, and they want to create some type of social impact angle, slant, thing that they're doing with their business. What is sort of a learning that would be helpful for an aspiring social entrepreneur that you have learned that you're like, oh man, everyone who's trying to do this needs to understand this?
The cool thing about it is, I think, knowing that it could be there's a balance of just like you're constantly trying to balance the social part of it and the entrepreneurship part of it. And like I think figuring out where you want that, because like it is like I've seen a lot of social enterprises and some of them just like want to, help to a certain extent, but they still need to like make sure that they make enough money, And so we're going to hire like half of them or this and half of them or that. And I think that's doable. Um, and so just know that the way that you're thinking about it, like, is there's no set way. Like, if you think you can, you're going to put down a business plan and this is how you want to do it, but the one you saw the other way did it somewhere different. I think it's like, it's not a wrong tune if you're singing it, in the sense of like, you can make it work if that's what you believe in. You have to have the community. Like, if you really want to go more on the side of the social, that's going to require a lot of philanthropic dollars, because you're not going to make it. So just know that, okay, am I in a place that has enough philanthropic dollars to fund this? Are people willing to do it year after year? You know, just have like a good idea of what that's going to be, and you can totally do it. I think just like showing up with the patience to do it. I think my advice would be, if you're going to like work with people who have like sort of like maybe some mental health diagnoses and things like that, just have some therapists ready, for not only for the program participants, but for you to, to make sure that you're kind of bouncing everything off of them.
Mm-hmm.
But I think just knowing that there's just like, you look at the market, and then you look at the philanthropic, like ability around you. And then I think you just find the balance and do it. And we definitely, like, if anybody wants to do this, like, put my email in the bio or whatever, and I'm fine with having it out there, and like, I get a lot of emails about it because there's not too many people doing it, I feel like.
Yeah. I really like how you framed that with like it's a balance between is this a social enterprise that's more social, or is this a social enterprise that's more enterprise, and to find like where is that on the spectrum so that you can understand how much am I going to have to raise, how much am I going
Mm-hmm.
to have to make, and now we can build the programs underneath that to support whatever that is for you. It's helpful.
Right. I think, and if it's a coffee shop, just have those anchors. I think that's the one thing, is just like, If you have like like a couple of people who are like, no matter what, no matter who walks through the door as far as employees, you have like this person knows how to do this and this person knows how to do that. And those spaces are always anchored down by that, then you can really go more towards the social part of it, I think. But if you're relying on the program participants for, business output, then it kind of goes into a whole different area, which we definitely are relying on that. Um, and so it can be done, but I think it's just like expectations and having good policies and procedures and things like that, even more so than you would for a normal operating shop where you're hiring baristas with experience, because you just don't know what you're going to get. We had a barista that she would just treat every transaction like it was a drug deal, and it was fucking hilarious. She'd just be like, "What you need?" Like it was great.
Oh, that's
People were like, "I just want a
amazing.
latte," but like, no, you don't have to do that.
Yeah.
This is all on the up and up.
Yeah.
But then we also would have people who were just like go out during their breaks and sell LSD to people in the parking lot too.
Yeah.
So it's just
Yeah.
like you have there's just a lot out there, but there was some hustle in that person and like finding that entrepreneurial spirit, which selling drugs is, let's face it,
Yeah. Yeah.
and so like let's try to get that going,
Let's point that
and
ship in a good direction and see where it
in a
sails.
less illegal direction, I think. But
Yeah. Yeah.
you know, I think just like all these things, there's so many things happening that I did not expect to happen. And I think that's the being able to exist in the chaos of it and almost like not revel in the chaos of it, but just like know what you can control and know what you can't control is
Yeah.
is a huge thing with it.
Yeah. Yep. I love that. So in your TEDx talk, you shared that oftentimes when folks meet you or talk to you for the first time and they find out that you're a social entrepreneur, they're really focused on, oh, so how many cafes do you have? How many employees? What's the outcome? What's the numbers? How should we reframe social enterprise or really just any type of social good to not be so focused on big is better?
It's a drum I've been banging for, because when I got into the nonprofit world, I didn't know anything about the nonprofit world. I came from the for profit. And so, but then I knew who I was going to work with. And it was like, yeah, well, how long is it going to be? And how many are you going to serve? And then you start doing the grants and it's like, okay, well, what's the cost per participant? And so it's just like, everything's been capitalized. I think for me, just being able to go like, oh, I don't want to do it that way. If you're going to deal with childhood trauma, you're not going to do it in a 3-week, 4-week program,
Yep. Yep. Yep.
It really was just like us kind of beating that drum of just like, hey, if you want, like we can do this or we can say we're doing it, but let's do it. And Omaha, like I'm so lucky that Omaha has the philanthropic dollars to have people be like, okay, I don't know who you are, but here's money to do whatever the hell it is you're talking about. And for some reason you think being a high school dropout qualifies you for this, you know. And so it was just like, yeah, it took me a year to kind of get into like the whole like, wait, I don't give a shit about outcomes. It's about the process and it's about the relationship. And you can take the stats and do anything you want with them. I can take my stats and I can make us look really great, and I can take my stats and make us look really bad. And I think there is a beauty pageant sort of thing to nonprofits sometimes. And it's like what we celebrate, and sometimes it's numbers. Sometimes it's real estate, like, like, wow, look at this. They're cutting the ribbon on this, $6
New
million
building.
building.
Yeah.
They must be doing something good. But I think that's the whole like juvenile delinquents make good entrepreneurs in the sense I'm just like, nah, fuck that. Like, we're not going to do it that way,
Yeah.
And so it was just like, and we have great funders, to be able to say like, hey, this is what's happening. This is happening. This is happening. But, for every kid that's doing good here, you have kids that are going through this and that. So there's always going to be some that's above water and some that's below. And I think if we're not seeing the individuals. I think if we see them as a number, or we see them as a stat, or we see them as a work in progress or a project or a dollar amount. And I think I'm just it was kind of easy to be over that sort of thing, you know. And I think the nonprofit world is kind of ready to be over that sort of thing. Like just show me something that's, I don't know if it's working, just show me something that's human, that's real. And I think that's the response to a lot of the better organizations. And there's great organizations here, you know. But even, you know, there's so many for-profit coffee shops that are doing stuff where it's just like, okay, cool, we're just going to take care of the employees, you know. And I think that's really cool. I was just listening to that podcast, your podcast yesterday. Was it Juan Diaz,
Oh yeah,
the
yeah,
from Colombia? It's like that
yeah.
one coffee shop that took their employee who was ending their time there to an origin trip. And I thought, okay, that's cool. You know, like that's showing your employee like I value you, and you're not even like looking for, you're not putting a monetary value on them for like, you know, because it's like sometimes we do with employees just in like corporations, like this is the monetary value that's put on them. And then when you go into a nonprofit and they're saying like, okay, this is the amount we're willing to put to this individual, you know. And I think that's like, that's just shit we have to get away from. Success is going to look different for everybody, and everybody's going to be on their own journey. And I think it's going to be, you know, it's the idea of like planting a tree whose shade you won't enjoy, you know, like all this stuff is going to happen later. But if it's something you want to feel a reward for, then you've kind of missed out on the point. Like, I mean, it's great. It's great when they do good, but because they do, but I think it's them. Like we always say, we're the dirt and they're the flowers. You know, it's like if you just give a good support network, it happens. But it's like, you don't spend time like what, you know, like, hey, look at that beautiful dirt over there, you know. You have a loose
Yeah.
idea of what it does, but I think it's just more just like, cool, let's just celebrate what's happening. And this was something that was inside them, and you know, they just found it. And I think that's the way to look at it, instead of, because nonprofits do go on to a cult of personality too. And I think it's you know, you have to have the face of the organization. You have to have somebody out there like, you know, doing the rah rah part of it. I'm willing to play that to a certain extent, but it is just fun to have the program participants speak for themselves of like, this is what it did, this is what I felt, you know. And like, boom. And I think they do it better than anybody else can.
Yeah, 100%. They found it, and they found what was already true of them, and they were
Mm-hmm.
able to reach that. I love that perspective. So I'm always curious about folks' information diet, things that you're reading, things that you're learning, things that you're consuming. Do you have
Yeah.
a do you have a couple of things in your information diet?
Yeah, it's mostly depressing. It's you know, I'm the I'm a member of the Depressing Book Club. I'm
Okay.
also the founder of the Depressing Book Club. Yeah, so we just read like kind of, you know, like King Leopold's Ghost about the, you know, about Congo and the rubber plantations for the Belgians. And but then I'm also just like, I'm reading a Dorothy Day book right now, just like, you know, Catholic innovator. And so it goes from like, I think it's just, we talk about balance. And so I get a good dose of Father Boyle, you know, reading those homeboy industry books. And then, you know, then I just read a book about the coup in Iran that we pulled in 1953. I love On Being. That podcast is great. I also love Rev Left Radio because I'm just a wacko leftist. And so it's just I just like to, I like to balance that. I think that's okay. I mean, I should probably elevate the discourse a little more than some of the depressing stuff going on in the world, but I do feel like I'm just constantly taking in information. So whether I'm listening to podcasts or I'm reading books, but I generally have like 5 books going at once. I should point out too that even though I didn't get my GED or start college till 27, I started reading voraciously at 18. And so I kind of haven't stopped since then. And so it's just like, just been a big reader all the time. And so if I want to know something, I don't go onto a website. Usually I'll just grab a book on it and read it.
Yeah.
And it's usually dated information. Then I have to go, you know, do podcasts and things like that. But I'm a Luddite till the end. I'm, you know, just like analog if I can,
It's
you know,
beautiful.
that's kind of the, you know, and then just constantly listening to music, I
Yeah.
think too, you know, that
So
sort of thing.
our closing tradition is to share 2 to 3 formative books, but since you already shared a few books,
Hmm.
What are 2 or 3 formative records for you?
Ooh. Wow. Okay, so formative records, I'm a big fan of the band Pavement. One of my favorite records has always been their first record, Slanted and Enchanted. That's a big one for me. I really think that around that same time frame, there's a singer-songwriter called Vic Chestnut. His first album, Little, was very big for me too. And then like in the what really was personality like forming for me was Midnight Oil in the 80s, like their 80s stuff. It was an Australian band, but they really were very much focused on nuclear war and like historical stuff. And it really kind of like pointed my brain towards basically they started with Aboriginal land rights in Australia that led to Native American land rights here, that led to the Belgians in the Congo, that led to, like Rupert Murdoch's takeover of media. And so it was a really good, it was like, I forgot the name of the album. It was like 109876. That was the one. And so it really kind of got me on the world stage as far as like thinking like progressively that way. So then I coupled that with the kind of punk music, and those were really big things for me that kind of sent me to the left, as hard as I went. Yeah. So those are really big ones for me. And then anything Husker Du, Bob Mould, Husker Du is just kind of a hardcore band from the 80s, but very good lyrics, very social justice lyrics. And then they were just the most kick-ass punk band. And then finding out that 2 of the 3 of them were homosexuals just really started me as an ally because they were already my heroes. And I'm like, oh, they're gay. Okay, cool. And so that just like
Yeah.
really started me on being an ally when you find out your hero is, of that community. So it's like, great. Okay. So yeah, those are the big ones for me.
Very cool. Those are some good records for sure. And it also illustrates that music shapes you, and
Oh gosh.
it
Yeah. Yeah.
forms your belief about the world, and informs you about injustices that you maybe didn't know were happening in
Right.
Australia.
Right. Exactly. Yeah. Some kid from Nebraska, like, damn, they screwed the Aborigines over and I'm pissed about it.
Yeah, yeah,
You know?
yeah. Very cool. Thank you for sharing. You said that folks can reach out to you via email. Any other ways that people can like connect or support what y'all are doing?
Yeah, yeah. If you just go to astewcoffee.org, you can check out, like kind of about us. There's definitely a donate page. If you're ever in town, definitely stop in. We do sell some of our clothing online if you want to buy some of the merch. If you want to
Yeah.
walk in the door with bags with dollar signs and the dollars like cartoonishly coming out of the bag would be good too. I think that's really, but anything, good review, whatever. It's just like, it's all positive for us.
Yeah. Very cool. Miah, thank you so much for being here and for sharing your heart and sharing what it means to live your life in a way that changes your community and demonstrates your love for the people that work for you and the people that also reciprocate that to you. It's really beautiful, and it's given me some things to think about around, are my perspectives on even for-profit businesses, are there ways that we need to stretch our own thinking around how do we treat people, and how do we care for them as employees within
Hmm.
the law, of course. But
Yeah.
thank you so thank you so much for sharing all of that. It's been a really, really great conversation.
I really appreciate you having me on and let me just kind of blather on about it. So thanks, man. I appreciate it.
It's beautiful, and I hope this isn't our last conversation.
Hell no.
As always, be well. It's Luke again. I'm back one last time with 2 questions. Number 1, did you learn anything from that conversation? Number 2, did you make a new connection, or perhaps there's a new question as a result of that conversation? If either of those 2 things are true, I'd love to hear about it. Go to my website, PomeloCoffeeConsulting.com, hit the contact tab. There's a form down there. I'd love to hear what connections you made, what questions were answered, or what new questions you might have. Let's chat about it. As always, be well.